Welcome to Life-Changing Challengers, the podcast where passion meets purpose. I'm Brad Minus, your host, guiding you through stories of transformation and triumph, from endurance feats to overcoming adversity. Our guests defy the limits and inspire action. Ready to ignite your desire and incinerate your barriers? Join us. Your journey to the extraordinary begins now. And we're back to another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. My name is Brad Minus. I'll be your host, and I am so honored to have author and health and wellness coach Kelly Majdan with us today. How are you doing, Kelly?
I am fantastic. How are you doing?
Excellent. So Kelly is the author of Lessons from the Obstacle Course, 5 Strategies to Conquer the Muddy Fields of Life. And it's all about what she learned as she started a journey with her and her family on the obstacle course. But before we get there, Kelly, as I ask everybody, will you tell us a little bit about your childhood, the complement of your family, and the environment you kind of grew up in?
Sure. Yeah, I was kind of like thinking about this, going, okay. So grew up in Colorado, and I always like to say that I grew up swinging from trees in Colorado because we lived out in the mountains, foothills of Colorado, just outside of Boulder. And when I was 8 years old, this is in the 70s, my parents were one of the first ones, or, in that group of folks that started that went through the divorce process, right? So 8 years old, not a lot of, I kind of always like to say my parents weren't really meant to be parents. So just kind of like, they just, weren't a lot of watching over kids. And my sister was 4 years older than me. So I was 8 years old, and I was kind of left to raise myself in a way because mom was always gone. Dad was just not interested. He's a great dad, but just didn't know what to do with kids. So pretty much from a very early time in my upbringing was just kind of making sure I looked out and took care of myself and did kind of my own thing all the time. And it kind of led to an interesting, I think it was 4th grade year, where didn't really show up to school. They passed me, and it was just an independent type of upbringing. Typical, I think, for a lot of kids in the 70s, if you go through any generational theory, they called our Generation X, the nomads or latchkey kids. I was definitely one of those latchkey kids. So I always joked around. My dad it was kind of like I said, a lot of people were getting divorced at the time, and he had another buddy of his who he just got a divorce. And so they ended up going to building houses kind of around. And I think they purposely scheduled the kid weekends together so that we would entertain ourselves. And so, which is fun. I grew up with a lot of really, they're like my brothers, and they would pick on me like they were my brothers. So, but it was, that was really pretty much my, my formative years was just really being on my own and making my own decisions and kind of just working very independently. We ended up going to college in a little town called Durango, Colorado, which is just a great little place called Fort Lewis College down in the mountains. Met my future husband there towards the end of my schooling, and he was going off to the Marine Corps. He was about 2 years ahead of me. I stayed back, finished my school because I was like, well, I'm not going to follow any guy around, right? But we stayed in contact and continued to blossom our relationship. Spring break of my senior year of college, I flew out to San Diego, which is where he was stationed because he went through the OCS and was now out at Camp Pendleton. And he was at some school, and he basically asked me to marry him. So once I finished college, I moved out to California, just kind of came home, packed up my stuff, and they did our home of record move, and we moved out to California. We've been together now. This June will be 30 years married. And so we've had a lot of very independent living, very much pulling on our own bootstraps, which is good and bad. I think you need to be able to pull on your own bootstraps and do your own thing. But I do think that I could have had a lot of, if it had been a thing, and I don't think it really was a thing in the early 90s with a lot of us. I think one thing is really wonderful benefit now is a lot of mentorship that a lot of people get. And it wasn't really something that I think we were really, or I don't know, people didn't really talk about when we were going through our early careers. And I know I could have benefited from that, but I also benefited from being able to just always rely on myself, which is pretty much how I grew up.
Yeah, I grew up as a latchkey kid, only child. And yeah, it literally was. And wake up in the morning, maybe one of my two parents were home. And it was, get yourself up, get yourself dressed, make yourself breakfast, get yourself to the bus stop, get to school, come back home. Nobody was there. Make yourself a snack, do your homework, and wait for someone to come home. I know exactly how that felt. And yeah, there was no like mentorship. You had your teachers and your family, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
What was your field of study in college?
So ironically enough, kind of funny, my father was a general contractor. So a lot of the houses we lived in, he built. And so I grew up in that kind of environment thinking, oh, I want to be an architect, because my dad would always talk about these ladies that he really enjoyed working with because they were just great, phenomenal architects. So I went to school thinking, okay, I'm going to go be an architect because I thought that would be fun. I always loved the fact that we always kind of were the process of building a home. And I sat through my first art classes and went, this sucks. Like, that's just not for me. So I, of course, did what every college student does who says, okay, I really chose poorly. I went to speak to my counselor, and she's like, well, you can go into business. I'm like, okay, I'll take a few business classes. Well, I got into my accounting class and absolutely loved it. I mean, one of the unique things about Fort Lewis, where I went to school, was at the time, and maybe it's still that way, I don't know, but at the time, because it was just this little mountain college, and it was like in the middle of nowhere, and it was just a really neat place to be. We had a lot of all of our teachers in the accounting department were all from the big 5 accounting firms. And they had just, they had run the course of working their corporate careers. And this was kind of like their second life, that they went and said, I just want to go out in the mountains and go teach. And so we really had some phenomenal teachers there. And I remember my teacher who did cost accounting, and the way he just explained cost accounting, I was like, oh my God, I get this. And I set the curve in the classes and went, all right, I'll be an accounting major. Then a few years later, I got into tax accounting and all the other, and I went, what did I do? This really sucks. But I finished with my accounting degree, but I never went forward to go after CPA or anything like that, because auditing absolutely was like, that was not my thing. So I ended up falling into financial services and working in the wholesaling and selling space, and fell into working with corporate 401k plans.
Wow. So this is gonna seem like surreal. You ready? Mm-hmm. So my dad was in real estate, started as an agent. Well, no, actually I should take that back. When I was really young, up to my age of 7, I think, my dad was an accountant for International Harvester. Then he went into real estate instead and started being an agent, and then went into real estate appraisal, and then started his own appraisal firm, and then retired from that not too long ago. So yeah, so I'm right there with you. Accounting, and I lived through all of the real estate. Matter of fact, I got my spending money for college and books and rent by doing appraisals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he taught me how to do them, and it's something that you can do on your own time. An appraisal.
Right. Yeah.
You make the appointment, you go look at the house, that you do the forms, and you send them in, and that's it. And it's pretty lucrative. So at the time, it was pretty lucrative. So I'm right there with you. I got it all.
Yeah. It's funny, as recovering accounting majors,
yeah.
I can't say I was ever an accountant just because I never followed through with that path.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, Challengers. I've got some exciting news to share. As we celebrate our 25th episode of Life-Changing Challengers, we're making a big change. Starting August 13th, we'll be releasing new episodes twice a week instead of just once. You can now catch inspiring stories and transformative journeys every Tuesday and Friday. So mark your calendars and get ready for more amazing content coming your way. Thanks for all your support, and let's keep challenging life together. And there's another story in there, but I'll just tell you that for about 3 or 4 years, I was a Series 7, Series 63, Series 24.
Okay.
That's for a whole different, we got to move on, but that's for a whole different conversation. So you got married and you're in San Diego, right?
We were in San Diego.
Okay. So how did you enjoy San Diego? How long were you there?
So loved it. It was absolutely beautiful. And it was like in the mid 90s. And so my husband was stationed there for 3 years. He actually had a little bit of a longer station than most Marines do, just because he changed from different units while at Camp Pendleton. And we actually put in for Okinawa because it was just the two of us and a cat. And, like, let's go, right? This would be really cool. But unfortunately, they didn't need his MOS and Okinawa, but they did in Pensacola, Florida. So we ended up next 3 years in Pensacola, Florida, which was a great duty station as well, too. It was a beautiful area. And I remember going out and looking and going to visit Floribama, and that was that bar. And it was literally in the middle of nowhere. And like, I know you go there now and there's high rises all over it, but literally at that time, it was like literally just in the middle of nowhere out on Orange Beach. So anyway, so we were there for 3 years and we decided I like to say we were young and dumb. We decided that it was time we didn't want to continue moving around a lot. And we were thinking about having a family and all that kind of good stuff. And so we said, well, let's go ahead and give up his commission because he was an officer and head home to Colorado. So we did that in 1999 and ended up going back home to Colorado. And then it took us another 3 years to get pregnant because we had fertility issues. It was really more on my side that I had the issue. And so, which was kind of it. There's some entertaining stories with figuring all of that out as well, too.
Yep. I have that stories too. So
yeah, in 2003, the Lord blessed us with our son. And then 2 years later, we had our daughter. So it was really worked out pretty well. I kind of felt, I always kept praying. I'm like, I just want to replace me and my husband. 2 is good. I didn't need to fill a band or anything like that. I figure man on man, offense, defense, that's just the perfect way to go. It worked out really well. We got the son first and then the girl. How perfect could this be, right? And they are probably the most planned children you could probably have because we had to follow a certain fertility schedule and a certain shot schedule. So we had to tell my body, you need to keep this egg. So there were certain things that we had to do in order to be able to make that happen. But yeah. And now my youngest is graduating from high school this week. Like,
wow.
Where did time go?
Exactly. You get older and time just seems to go faster.
Oh, it does. It does. And especially, I thought, it took us, we were married 9 years before we had children. So we were in our 30s by the time we had kids, which is, back then, that was kind of a little unusual. A lot of people were having kids earlier, but that now for so many folks, that's normal. So a lot of people are having kids in their 30s. And I think that's where now our story will really resonate a little bit more because we are that older parent.
So what were you doing at this point?
So,
as far as not being, I know you're trying to get pregnant. That makes one thing. You're trying to be a mom. But what were you doing for a living at this point?
So at that time, I was working for a mutual fund company when my son was born as an internal sailor manager. So I was managing its sales desk. And I was one of the supervisors on the sales desk, actually. And then when my daughter came along, I was working at a 401k internal sales desk, and I was managing that desk and building out those internal wholesaling platforms.
Nice. And what was your husband doing? Oh, he was doing construction.
No, he got out of freight work. So, and he ended up getting his program management professional. So he was a supply officer, which he's always kind of like, oh, that's not the sexy thing in the Corps, right? But like, you know what? You believe me, people want to make sure that they love and they take care of their supply officer because where do you get your stuff from? And so it was natural for him to go into a program management professional. So I always like to say he's the guy that gets the folks, the business users who are using the programs to communicate to the IT folks that are building the programs because there's not a good communication line here. They don't speak the same language. Yes.
I don't know. The thing is that in my professional life, I'm also a designated PMP and PGMP as well.
So you know very well what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know that. And it's just being surreal now, the things that are very comparable to both of our lives. It's like uncanny what is going on here. But yeah, that's kind of what pays the bills around here, at least a little bit. But okay, so fast forward a little bit, and there was a big obstacle that happened in your life.
Yes. So we're really kind of where I think we're all just kind of going along with this. And if I were to go back and say where this obstacle stemmed from, it would stem from my husband being a Marine. When everything was happening, if we remember, early 2000, right? 9/11. And then we literally got a call in 2002 or 2001, actually, when that happened. The Marine Corps was keeping tabs on where all of their people were. And so, so we're really heightened in that respect. But as everything was going on over there, in 2005, our daughter was born. And at that point, 2 weeks after our daughter was born, my husband went to Iraq to help with what is called a Z backscatter X-ray man program, which was able to scan vehicles going into Marine Corps checkpoints. And he was actually, they sought him out for this job because of the fact that he was a Marine, he was a supply officer, he's a PMP. So he spoke Marine because the Marines kept breaking everything, which go figure, right? And they really needed to get these vans up and running in country. So the first year of our daughter's life, he was actually a contractor out in Iraq and went through all sorts of things. And there's all sorts of stories with that respect. The reason why I tell that is because I think there were some things that happened at that point in time, because when he came back, his health started changing. And there was a lot that was going on with his health that we really, going back and putting the pieces together is where I've connected the dots, but didn't really understand it when things started kind of falling apart early around 2012, 13-ish. And my husband ended up turning to me one day because we were living at the time then in Arkansas, because a big company picked up my husband and he was working for that company and living in Northwest Arkansas. And his parents had followed us out, lived in Bella Vista. There's very windy roads there. And as we were leaving or getting ready to leave his parents' house, he's like, honey, I think you need to drive. And we hadn't been drinking. So I'm kind of like, okay, well, what's going on here? This is kind of strange because normally, he doesn't ask that question. Well, when we get home, I asked him, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Because I did notice a lot of things were going on. I did notice my husband was quite grumpy. He was complaining of headaches a lot more. He was getting dizzy. We now, as a family, we really all enjoy, especially my daughter and I, love amusement park rides and going on, and of course, it kind of runs your head around. Now, and I was kind of thinking all of this was going on, and we were also both trying to build our careers at the companies that we were at, and we had young kids. So I just thought maybe he's just getting tired and, that's just life going on. Well, when we got home, I asked him, what's going on? Because you're off. There's just things going not straight. And he goes, I'm seeing double. I'm like, well, what do you mean you're seeing double? Because I see two of you stacked on top of each other. It's kind of canted. I'm like, okay, well, babe, how long has this been happening? He said, pretty much since we moved to Northwest Arkansas, which had been 5 years earlier. I'm like, you're just now telling me this? 5 years. 5 years he had been dealing with this. Now, remember, I have a Marine. And Marines are stubborn. And he's also a New Yorker. He's I'm like, he's got everything. He is the most stubborn man out there. And I'm like, babe, this is not right. Like, you need to go get this looked at. So I annoyed him enough for him to finally go see an eye doctor. And when he goes to see an eye doctor, this one eye doctor says, oh, well, you just need prism glasses. I'm going, okay. And he's like, fine, put the prism glasses on me. I'm good. Just call it good. So, I do what every wife does and every good caretaker who loves somebody does. I'm like, okay, well, why do you need the prism glasses? What's going on? Did he tell you that? And he's like, no, we just need prism glasses. I'm like, okay, that's not enough. Like, that's not the answer. Anyway, we would banter back and forth like this for a while until my son, chasing after our daughter with a suction cup bow and arrow, he ends up running into it and cuts thankfully, just the white of his eye, because it hit my daughter's door and she slammed the door and he kept going.
Jeez.
Yes, we're not bad parents. It's just kids.
No.
They just do things. But I also do think God works in mysterious ways. And the eye doctor that my son saw, I asked my husband, and again, bothered him enough. Like, will you please go see him? Like, get a second opinion, because prism glasses isn't going to work. So this eye doctor does go a little bit further. My husband, not only a Marine, jumped out of perfectly good airplanes, did all that kind of good stuff, but he's a career lacrosse player, well, not career, but like played lacrosse all through junior high and high school and even into his college years and stuff. So he's thinking, well, maybe there's a concussion or something going on there. So he sends him off to a neurologist. The neurologist sends him off to get an MRI. And literally on January 24th, my husband, we went in to see the doctor and found out he had a pineal gland cystic mass sitting in the middle of his brain. And basically it was sitting between the 4 lobes and it was cutting off his circulation. And I joke with my husband now, I'm like, you are alive because of me hounding you, because it literally would have caused a brain aneurysm. Like he was probably a year or 2 away from just dropping dead from a brain aneurysm. So that sent us into a really great neurologist at UAMS in Little Rock. I can't say enough about Dr. Day. He was phenomenal. And after 5 minutes of sitting down with us, Dr. Day turns to his assistant, says, schedule him for brain surgery, like immediately. I'm going, wait a minute, what? Brain surgery? What? So I'm like, okay, I know my husband's not going to ask, so I ask. So again, caretakers out there, you ask the questions. If they're not going to ask, you ask the questions because you have to. I'm like, stop. Tell me why. And he pulled up a perfectly good x-ray of a brain and my husband's, and he said, see that blob right there? And I'm like, yes. He goes, that should not be there. That needs to come out because that's going to kill your husband, basically. So I'm like, okay, let's get it done. I just went into, okay, let's, operation mode. Let's get her done. Let's take care of the kids because the kids were little. So I had to make sure they were taken care of. We had just gotten 2 puppies that were going to be ginormous dogs. So I got my aunt and uncle who absolutely love animals and got them scheduled to come up to take care of the dogs because we were going to be down at the hospital for about a week or so. And just basically made sure everybody knew what was going on, made sure the kids' school knew what was going on, was taking care of FMLA paperwork, just everything that you just have to do to ensure that he is going to have a good recovery and didn't have to worry about it. I even bought like a new mattress because I knew he was going to be in bed for 4 months. So it's that just operation, have to have this handled so you get it. You just do it. You get it done. He had surgery in March of 2014, and the doctor came out and found out that they also were worried it could be cancerous. Thankfully, we dodged that bullet. It was just this big protein blob sitting in the middle of his brain. Weirdest thing ever. And I don't know really where it came from. And that's the thing that they don't understand. That leads us to a couple of years ago, we found out that wasn't the only cause of his double vision because we continued having issues with his double vision. And it never really corrected itself as it should have corrected itself by getting that thing out. Right. And then we went to a doctor when we moved here, we found another really great doctor who operated on what they call a 4th nerve palsy. Anyway, because the surgeries weren't fixing it completely, he sent him off to get blood work. And we now know that my husband's been battling Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, which is called LEMS. And it's a neuromuscular autoimmune issue. So that was also part of what was going on. And I have a feeling if I connect the dots, knowing what I know now that I've done a big deep dive into health, is I think something when he went off to Iraq might have triggered this. I have no proof, but if I were to kind of go back and see, it does seem like because everything was fine before then.
Right. Yeah, I can always see that when there's a certain point in your life, right, where things start to change. You're always going to go back and check that out. Yeah. Now, I know nothing about LEMS. Did the doctor say anything about it could be genetic? It could be just something that is passed down. Or is it something that can actually be, acquired?
It's typically acquired by small cell cancer, 60% of the time. So, but my husband's never smoked. And I mean, he's about as clean as you can get, except for alcohol. But anyway, when he was sent off to have chest x-rays done and all that kind of stuff to try to figure out why he has LEMS, I knew that there was no small cell cancer that was going to be found because there's no reason for it. There's nothing in his history that would have brought that up. So of course, nothing was found there. And there's really all of the typical things that would bring up LEMS. He didn't have before. Like, we have no idea. It's just something that has just happened. And it's a very, very rare neuromuscular autoimmune issue. You might have heard of myasthenia gravis, which is MG. These two are on opposite camps. This is also kind of where the whole obstacle course stuff comes in and why we continue doing this. We didn't realize it at the time, but now we have an even more reason why we continue with obstacle courses. So if you think of, you work out, a lot of your viewers work out. So think of, you're going to do 3 sets of bicep curls, and you're going to pick a pretty challenging weight because you want to really build that bicep up. So your first set to 10, you're like, okay, that's not a big deal. I got this. Second set 10, you're like, okay, this is getting a little bit harder. And then your third set, if you picked a good weight, you're going to be like, I can barely get out that. The last 2 reps are like killing you, right? Well, for my husband, reverse that. So what LIMS does, the first set he does, it's like he can barely complete the first 10. The second 10 is getting easier. And then the third 10, he's like, I can do this all day. And it's with a challenging weight. Because what it does is interrupts the acetylcholine through your calcium channels to get your muscles to fire. So we all need that channel that goes into your muscles. And that is what tells your muscles to, tells your brain, tells your muscle to constrict. So that's how LIMS affects people. Now, myasthenia gravis is the opposite. The more you use your muscle, the more tired it gets. Now, my husband needs to use his muscle or he'll end up not being able to have his muscles. So that's really important for him to continue to be active.
Oh, and that's going to be frustrating. That's the acetylcholine. It's basically, it takes his muscles a lot longer to fire.
Yes.
Than the rest of us. The rest of us, we can probably do a dynamic warm up and our muscles will fire right at that point, where it's going to take him, it sounds like it's going to take him it's a specific, whatever muscle he's going to be using. He's got to warm up and do several longer sets of things in order for him to be primed for it to fire.
Pretty much. Once he gets going, which is good. And there is a medication right now that he is able to take that is helping as well, too. And so he knows when that starts to wear off, he needs to take it, but it's just a really, really expensive medication. So thankfully, we've discovered the problem. The only thing is there's not a cure for it.
Right.
So now you manage it.
Right. How did you move that into this obstacle course racing that you're so famous for?
What they would say famous for.
It's the book. It's Lessons from the Obstacle Course. So it's an obstacle course. So when did that all start?
So yeah, that all started the year my husband had his brain surgery in 2014. During the time that he was recovering, we had a few issues that sent him back to the hospital, like his brain swelled and he had blood clots and a few other things that we were managing. And my back went out on me. Like with what happens with a lot of caregivers, like I had poured everything into taking care of my husband and the family and making sure our whole ship stayed afloat, that I was not taking care of myself. And when I was in my 3rd trimester with my daughter, my back had gone out on me as well. And so it went out on me again. And I'm like, I couldn't even, I had to sit on the floor to bring my legs up to tie my shoes, because if I tried to bend over, I wouldn't be able to get myself back up. So I was in the process of healing myself along with my husband. And I had some really great friends from work who were like, okay, Kelly, you need to come do this thing called a Warrior Dash with us. And they were all excited and like really bubbly about it. And I'm like, yeah, let's go do, like, okay, I jump in. And then I took a stop. I'm like, wait a minute. What's a Warrior Dash? Like, what did I just sign myself up? So it was 5 miles and some obstacles. You go through a little bit of mud and all that kind of stuff. And, that was when obstacle courses were kind of starting to get their thing. Like Tough Mudder was starting to get their, and Spartan was coming along. And I'm like, oh, this sounds like fun. Yeah, let's go do this. Okay. They did not tell me how muddy it was. Like I don't know if you've ever done a Warrior Dash, but the last thing to get your medal is you have to swim through a mud pit. I'm like, seriously, swim through a mud pit. I'm going, okay, what? I had the best time. Like I ate it up. I loved it. Like, I've been a runner. I've done a lot of races. I did 1 marathon. I'm like, okay, check the box. I'm good. Not going to do that again. Training sucked. But I did it. And I'm like, this is fun. And my husband and the kids had gone along with us out to this, dusty field in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And standing on the sidelines, they were excited about it. They're like, oh my God, we want to do one of these. This is great. And but that's the biggest thing, because it lit that spark in my husband because he was starting to because we had some of those setbacks, you're not going to be able to do the things you used to be able to do, all that BS that people say and the excuses that people make. He really wanted to get back and play lacrosse again. He wanted to go and do the things that he wanted to do. And he was starting to get this feeling that I'm not going to be able to do this. And so seeing the course, and we were talked about it on the way home, he's like, I really want to do one of those things. I'm like, okay, let's find one. So we ended up finding Conquer the Gauntlet. And I picked a race in September 2015. He had his surgery in 14 because I really wanted to make sure he had enough time to recover. And it had to be far enough out, but close enough to home because we couldn't go too far away from the kids because we only get a couple night passes because his parents would watch the kids. Right. So, but we ended up doing Conquer the Gauntlet in September 2015 out in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we just had a blast. It was so much fun. And so that really just started our journey. And then our kids, as they got older, they were like, we want to do this. And so we took them on a couple of warrior dashes and they absolutely loved it. And I've got some wonderful stories of the kids, first going through the mud pit going, oh, this sucks. And then the next year we encouraged them to bring some friends along. And then they become the cheerleader for their friends going, oh, you can do this. This is going to be so much fun. Seeing that transformation in them was just really cool and seeing how they've grown. And my daughter is not afraid of anything, and she's also a fantastic lacrosse player, and so she's closes everybody down on the defense line. So just seeing them not be afraid to get in there and get dirty because they've done a lot of these obstacle courses with us, and we try to do at least we try about 3 to 5 a year if we can because it's always been challenging with the kids' sports schedules. So in fact, we've got a trifecta to do this year, and we'll be doing Conquer the Gauntlet one more time because they're going to be closing the race. Like anybody going out there, go do Conquer the Gauntlet one last time. It was just my hats are off to Man Prize and their whole family because they've done just a phenomenal thing with Conquer the Gauntlet.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, as much as I love to have these races available for people, it seems like the days of the grassroots event planners that want to do this is kind of gone.
Yeah.
You got to it's more because it's just pure finances.
Oh, it is. It's got to be expensive.
Yeah. Well, to rent whatever area you're going to rent, that's first. So I helped to start a series out here called Best Damn Race. So we've got Best Damn Race out here. I just kind of was helped. Best Damn Race, Tampa, which is Safety Harbor, New Orleans, Savannah, Orlando, and Jacksonville.
Okay.
So there's this series, and it's always a 5K, 10K, and a half marathon. But I understand what it costs. The biggest thing is police, right? Security for over there. It's one thing is to rent the area, but out here, the biggest expense is the police department because you're not paying the marshals, which is what they're doing is they're marshaling the course. You're not paying their regular fee. You're paying their overtime.
Yeah, it's true.
But because of that being just so expensive and inflation and the whole bit, they're just taking these grassroots and they're lucky if they can sell the race to Spartan or some big conglomerate like that. Otherwise, the grassroots ones just go bye-bye, It's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate because of the cost of Spartan and not a dig against them, but because they put on a great event.
Yes.
But I think a lot of these, I was sad when the Warrior Dash went away because that was such a great entry level race. And then this year, Rugged Maniac went away. And I hadn't gotten a chance to do one of those. I was really looking forward because they were going to have one here in Dallas. I'm like, oh, let's go do this because it's close to home. It's in our backyard.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's sad because you see a lot of those just kind of fold shop. And I don't know, I'd be curious. And so I'll put this out to the world. I'm like, is it the group that were really doing a lot of these races just now moving off and having kids and not participating anymore? Are they seeing a lot of participation drop off? I don't know what the case is from that perspective, but I would love to see a lot more people get out there because there's so much. That's why what I wrote the book about wasn't about how to complete the obstacles, is really about the mindset of, what you mentally go through and physically go through and how you relate that to what you mentally go through and physically go through in real life, because a lot of the challenges are very similar from a perspective. And there's so much growth that you can get from doing these courses and doing things that challenge you, because we don't do enough that challenges us anymore. We have got very sedentary lives. We don't go out and really push ourselves to do hard things. I think we really, truly miss out on that rewarding part of pushing your limits to know what you can do. Like, I am not a podium person. I always joke around, like, I'm going to be a podium person just because I'm going to outlast everybody in my age group. Then I'll finally get up there. I don't go through these very fast, but I go through them, and every time I take on a course, I finally get through another obstacle that's been challenging me. So it's that resilience to not give up and to keep trying and kind of facing your fears and all sorts of other things that we see in life that you find on the course.
Oh, and I agree wholeheartedly. I believe that the generations coming in behind us, while of course there's exceptions, but that they are not going out and doing these hard things. And I believe it's going to cost us some evolution of the human spirit, to conquer things that are much, much more difficult than ourselves. Now, don't get me wrong. We've continued to increase the pace and lower the time on the marathon. We've continued to race the mile and get faster. So we're getting faster, and part of that is training theory, but those are exceptions, and it just doesn't seem like we're doing anything hard. I coach a cross country team out of a private school that's got 800 kids, and I have a problem fulfilling a team. When I was a kid, everybody wanted to be on a team, and a lot of them would gravitate towards cross country, especially if they played baseball, if they played soccer. They would race cross country because it would get them in shape for their sport. And that's not happening anymore. People are just going there and they're doing their thing and they're relying on their talent, and which is fine, but it's not giving people that evolution of the human spirit. That's why I do what I do. I am constantly trying to push the boundaries. I might be slightly older than you, but other than that, I'm still trying to keep going.
Yeah.
And that's what my whole roster of people that I coach are of that mindset. It just doesn't seem to be coming in behind us as far as the generations go.
Yeah. I don't know where the change was. Was it COVID? Was it the fact that we've not had to push? We've not had a lot of adversity, which thankfully, I'm not asking for adversity. I don't want it in that respect, like a big adversity. But I don't know whether we're not pushing people like we used to. We're patting people on the head and saying it's okay. And we're not encouraging people to really face the things that, oh, you know what? Actually, I didn't do this right. And I need to go back and work harder to overcome this or to be better. I'm sure there's probably a big rabbit hole we could go down on that one from a philosophy standpoint.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to hurt us as a society. It's going to hurt us as our children are being raised. I feel very fortunate that we have taken the kids on this journey with us, and they're not afraid to get out there and push it. They're not afraid to get hurt. They're not afraid to fail. And I think that's the biggest part of it. I think we can all just be responsible for our own little world that we live in. And I know at least I've done that with our kids. And I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to be able to do that. I hope that more people will, because we have to. It hurts to fall. This is a good example. So I had a neighbor who, her kids, every time they went out, they were padded up. Oh my gosh, helmet, elbow pads, shoulder pads, wrist guards, knee pads, everything on their bike. And they would go out on their bike and just kind of, and they were nervous. My kids, maybe it's just because I come from that generation. I'm like, you just get out there, go do it. And, call me bad parent or whatever, I don't care. But my kids knew that it hurt when you fall. So it made them stronger and better at what they did. It made them stronger and better bike riders. It made them stronger and better in their sports. It made them stronger and better in everything that my neighbor, unfortunately, her daughter went out one day without the stuff on, her safety gear on. And when she fell, she actually broke her arm because she didn't know how to fall. One of these races we were on, and we had just gotten over this thing, and I was so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got over this. And we started running, and my foot caught a limb because, of course, these are cross,
trail races,
stuff like that. They're trail races. And my foot caught a limb, and I went down. But I went down. I knew how to fall. I went down on my side, rolled over, and jumped back up. My husband just looked at me like, what? And the volunteer person was over there like, okay, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, just fine, just fine. Later on, when I pulled everything off, I had a massive bruise all over my side and everything. But that's the whole point, is that you have to learn how to fall. And if you don't learn how to fall, to catch yourself in a way that you don't hurt yourself physically in life as well as mentally in life, then you're going to be hurt more. Now, it takes that first hurt, but you have to learn from that and then move forward with it and be like, okay, I'm going to learn how to do this better. I'm going to learn how to roll with the punches and get myself back up. That's that resilience part of people that we really have to learn in order to be able to continue pushing forward. Because if you don't, and you stay stuck in this and afraid to fall and hurt yourself, you won't build. There's literally, you build new neurons every time you push yourself through a wall. It's like scientifically proven now that they've said every time you do something hard, you're actually building and growing new neurons. So It's still happening. And you have to continue to push yourself and continue those challenges. And that's part of the reason why I think these things are so great. And the obstacle courses are so fun, because you're putting yourself in a position where you have to push yourself.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And again, I think that's one of the things that I can't remember the name, is the guy that started Spartan Race, but that was one of the things that he was always thinking about when he first started. Warrior Dash was the OG of obstacle courses. I think they were the very first one, and Spartan came on top of that. But yeah, it's so true. Learning how to fall. I remember learning how to ride a bike. You and I didn't grow up in the age where you put a helmet on. Oh, that was cool. When it's our parent running behind us with holding onto the back, and you're like this, and then it lets you go and you fall. Yeah. And then you get back up, and then you call. But it was the first fall, and you might have fallen, you might have skinned something. And then my dad was probably like your husband. He's like, it's fine. Get back up on there. We could do this. Yeah. Walk it off and get back on there. And, and after a couple of days of doing this, all of a sudden you would go through and you'd get a few cycles in before you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to brake now. So you'd fall on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way if you get it. Then dad would teach you how to brake, and then you try again.
Yeah.
And that was the way it was. But now it's like, a lot of times it's like, oh, I'll try this. Oh, that didn't work. Let me go on to something else. Oh, I didn't like that. That didn't work. Oh, I failed there. Oh, I'm going to go on. And people aren't daring to fail anymore. It's like failure is the end all be all, which what it is actually an experience to teach you to then succeed. You can't succeed without failure.
You can't succeed without failure. And I think that's what, you're asking, like, what is this generation lost? They lost that ability to work through their failures because there's been a propensity to not allow them to fail.
Right.
Or to make it okay, or almost kind of like placate.
The first time that I was with a friend who had a 4-year-old or 5-year-old playing soccer, and he's out, hey, we're going to watch the soccer game. And I'm like, what's the score? And they're like, oh, well, they don't keep score. It's got to be, we're just for fun here. And I was like, what? But the funny part was all the moms were like, yay, good job, Johnny, blah, 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 blah. And the guys were like, somebody would score and it was like, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the game, okay, great. But all the guys would be like, yeah, 4-2, buddy, 4-2.
Exactly. And you know what, though? The kids are keeping score, too. Like, literally, they are keeping score. So yeah. I know it's, it's kind of sad. And that's why I hope, and that's why I think that it's sad that I see some of these races folding as they are. And it's Joe DeSana who does the big Spartan,
right.
Tough Mudder, and now Tough Mudder, because he taught a Tough Mudder as well. But I hope that they don't, and I hope that we can spur some. And I love that you've got one that goes on in your area. Is it still going on?
We have a Spartan that goes right down the street. He does the stadium. They use Raymond James Stadium one, the inner city one. Then we've got a one in Orlando that is also a city, but not inside of a stadium. And we've got, so you could do a trifecta out here in the Tampa, Orlando area.
I think I need to do that one. But you had mentioned another race that you said that you had helped start.
That's Dam race, but that's a road race.
Yes. Oh, it's a road race. Okay.
Race, 5K, 10K, half marathon. Yeah, those are road races. But we've got a lot of trail races out here as well. But yeah, COVID was definitely an instigator where you got to go. They went 2 years without being able to put on a race, So depending on what their finances were, that could pretty much deter any, it's a lot of companies that went out of business because of COVID.
Too many.
If you can't put on events, they weren't allowed to put on events.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. So which made sense for that environment. So what would you say is your hardest obstacle in a race? What was the hardest obstacle that you could think of?
So in Conquer the Gauntlet, there was this race. It's called the Continental Divide. And it's almost a 14-foot tall wall that you have to grab a rope and climb over. And when we came to this wall, unfortunately, was that my husband's very first race after surgery. And you actually have to scale a 6-foot wall to get into the starting pin of Conquer the Gauntlet. And when he scaled that wall, he found out a few years later that he ended up tearing a part of his bicep. So by the time we got to this wall, he couldn't grab the rope to climb up because he had hurt it. He'd done further damage on another obstacle right after. So he's like, well, you give it a try, honey. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll try it. And I got about halfway up and I'm hanging from this rope and I'm going, I can't make it up. Like I had not trained, like I had not done, I really hadn't known what a big obstacle course race was like. And the ones that were in Warrior Dash, they had slats across. So I could kind of climb up it with the rope and the rope had knots in it. So it was a lot easier to do. This one, you were really relying on brute strength, your upper body strength, and just technique to be able to get up and over it. And so because he couldn't get over it, and this is kind of one of the lessons, I used his excuse. Him was my excuse to not try again because I knew I couldn't do it. And I'm like, oh, well, you can't go up there. So I couldn't get my butt over that thing. So we walked around it. But that wall it really bothered me because when we got back to the house, I was kind of looking at the obstacles and kind of reliving the day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 80% of the people can get over this wall. What is my problem? Why can't I get over this thing? So we did the race again the next year. And my husband had healed his arm. We hadn't had surgery yet, but he had healed his arm through just rehab. And he got over it and was waiting at the top for me. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get over this wall. So I got up and I got stuck again and had to slide back down. So all right, I'm going to do this again. So I climb up the rope again. I get up to him and I just barely get myself onto this chicken wing position. And I'm like literally holding onto the top of the wall, like with my armpits and my arms at the top. And I'm just looking at him going, I don't know what to do. I can't get over this thing. And he's just looking, he's like, well, what do you want me to do? Like literally, I was so pissed at that time. I'm like, just pull me the bleep over. Just get me over this thing. And so he got me over it, but I was still mad because I'm like, why can't I get over this stupid wall? So the next year, our kids were old enough. Our daughter she had to be 12. So, our son was 15. So we were able to now go participate in the race, or he was 14. Anyway, they were right around that age. And we get to this wall again. And my husband and son decide to go to the other side. We have to run and go grab the rope. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm going to start with a rope that's right down here and touch the ground so I don't have to run. I'm like, no, don't need to go run and do that thing. I'm like, I can't do it anyway. And my daughter tries first, gets halfway up. She can't do it. So she comes back to me. She's like, okay, Mom, you try. So I go up and I get stuck again and have to slide back down. I'm like, this is pissing me off. Like, this is ridiculous. I cannot get over this dang wall. So we watch a few more people and she looks at me. She's like, you going to try it again? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to try it again. So I get myself up to that chicken wing position. I'm going, are you kidding me? Like, I cannot. Like, and this time my husband's not there to pull me over. Like, it's all by myself. And I was getting so frustrated. I was so pissed. And then I started going, well, why do I even want to get over this thing? What is my problem? Like, this is that growth moment, that thing where you're going, nobody cares if I get over this stupid wall. Like, what am I doing? And then I hear from right below me, my daughter, you got this, Mom. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get over this wall now. Like, that was that thing that finally made me go, okay, Kelly, figure it out. You know how to do this. Like, that resilience piece that pulled into me, like, I can do this. It's not going to be pretty, but I can get my butt over this wall because I have to, because she's going to get over this wall. I have to be up there for her, because if I'm not up there for her, she's going to struggle to get over this wall. So don't know how I did it. I think I probably kicked the guy next to me. I literally threw my leg up and over. I somehow, I think I pulled a muscle in my side. I don't know how I did it. But I literally rolled myself over the top of that wall. It was not pretty at all, but I got over. And I was up there to help my daughter. And I think the guy that I probably almost kicked, he stayed up there to help me pull Tori over as well. So that wall solidified to me why these challenges for me were so important, because, by the time I got that wall, I think I was 48 years old. Am I going to give up on myself and let this thing of age stop me from trying the hard things in life? What example am I setting for my daughter and my son if I don't continue to push and do the hard things in life? We've got a lot of life to live. And if we don't be that role model for our kids, then they're going to find a role model somewhere else, or they're going to role model something that we don't want them to. I know there's plenty of things that I have screwed up, and they're going to go to therapy for something that I've done. You don't get through life as a parent not doing something that you screw up. But for the most part, though, I'm hoping that the majority of what we role model is that path of resilience, that path that you can do it, that path that, you just have to keep going and keep trying. That was a lot of that. What I learned on that wall over these years is we've kept, and I've conquered it a few more times. But that's also, that was probably the biggest thing that I took away, and the biggest memory I have from some of these the obstacles that we've gone over.
I did see that it's kind of where everything just kind of came to fruition for you. Mm-hmm. It sounds like is the memory of that. Yeah. I have to say something about obstacle courses. It's really amazing. And it's the same way in triathlon, is that you're really not battling anybody else. It's not really a competition with other people. There are some competitive leagues and things. Spartan, you can get money for winning and all that sort of stuff. But the majority of people, you're battling the obstacle, you're battling yourself.
Yes.
It's always just doing a little bit better than you did the day before. And everybody knows that. And because everybody knows that, the competition level is next to nothing as far as the neighbor next door, the person at the top. Like you said, the person that you actually almost kicked or did kick, we don't know yet. He was stayed up there because he saw your daughter down there and wanted to help. And that is the environment in these obstacle courses.
Yes.
I remember the first time I did Tough Mudder, and I didn't know what to think. The first few obstacles were pretty much individual. You had to go under stuff, under and over, and blah, 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 blah. There was really nothing high, nothing low. And then we get to this vertical gate, wire gate. You had to go up and over and back down. You really had to go up. And it's so high that you had to crawl and then crawl back down.
Right.
And I didn't understand why there was people on the ground, on the bottom rung, and they're all sitting down and pulling. And I didn't understand what they were doing until I got up and over. Everybody was in there and they were keeping it taut. So it made it easy for the next person. And then when you jumped down, you took somebody's spot and you waited for another person to come over, and that person came over. Then you went on with the obstacle course.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I was enthralled. I just was enthralled. I was like, wow, I had more confidence in a human being than ever at that point.
I tell you, one of the best things about these races, and I get asked a lot about what I hope the takeaway from my book is that I want people to embody that mindset that they have on the course. And the last section I have is about collaboration. And it's about the fact that when you get out on that course, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you look like. We are all out there battling together. People jump in, strangers who never met before. We did the trifecta weekend in Dallas last October, and there was a kind of a straight wall that you had to go up. And my husband actually got up to the top, but you had to climb up kind of like those rock climbing things. And I couldn't get my foot to the first one to get my leverage up. And this man just walked right by. He was walking me by and he just stopped and he looked, he said, "Do you need a hand?" I'm like, "Yes, please." And he gave me a little foothold. I got up there, and as I was climbing up, I looked over and noticed he was doing his penalty rep, and then he took off. if he was going for time and trying to do like a PR, he paused long enough to give me a hand, and he didn't have to.
Right.
And you see stories like this, and you see just human nature all the time on these courses. I never go through one where we haven't had a group of people coming together to help others over an obstacle, and where, people have stopped to help us. It's just that giving nature of human that we naturally give. And it's a place where people can just do it and feel good about it and not think about it. That I just wish that was something that we can embody a little bit more off the course. As I say, in the muddy field of life, like, just little things like giving a smile to someone at the grocery store, holding a door open for somebody who's coming in behind you and not letting it slam shut on them. Little things like that really truly mean something. Like, what it says is that you see that person. You're not just walking through life in your own little bubble, that you see that there are other people around you, and having just being that little extra courteousness so they feel seen. And that can mean so much for somebody in one day that you never know what impact you can make.
I agree. Into a crowded line of cars, 13 different cars, knowing that the people in back of you are trying to get home too.
Exactly.
Let one or two in, people.
Not the 13.
And go on your way. Okay? You've got people, remember the people behind you.
Exactly. I will tell you, I love being back in Texas. I was actually born in Texas. I love being in Texas because people here know how to merge one at a time. Just kind of go like it's just slip in. It's awesome. My hands are down to Texas drivers. Y'all know how to drive.
Yeah. And block and making a left-hand turn and blocking out those front lanes so that the people behind you can follow you through.
Yeah.
Come on, people. That's my little quibble that I have for some people, because Florida's got some really bad drivers. Not as bad as DC, but it's getting close.
Yeah. Well, you got a lot of the Northerners coming down, don't you?
You have a lot of snowbirds.
Yeah.
So the driving gets worse in the winter. So that's what you want to call it. But that's amazing. So you have a plan of action in your book. You want to just kind of go over those few different attributes, and then we can wrap up?
Sure. So after I wanted the book to not just be like a story about our escapades and what I learned from them. I really wanted folks to be able to just kind of hear the lesson, take the information, but then have some questions to really kind of go through and ponder what's going on in their life. My goal is that it will help people kind of build on their resilience, build their inner strength, and just really feel like they can actually move through life the way they want to move through life. So basically take their control and their power back in their life. So I go through 5 different strategies. It's recovery, discovery, persistency, creativity, and collaboration. And then I break it down into 3 chapters each. But from each one, from the lesson, there's like little bullet points about this is what you learned. This is what we went over in this chapter. And here are some questions, like here's a scenario, think about this kind of scenario. And then here are some questions that you can ponder that will help you work through a problem. She goes, I keep going back to the book to just kind of work through my problems. Warms my heart.
Oh my God.
So that was my hope. I just hope that people will take the kind of self-coaching questions, after becoming a health coach. How can I help people kind of self-coach? Because a lot of us like to try to take things on and take care of ourselves. And I think that's wonderful. Maybe that'll help you do that a little bit better.
So it's recovery,
Persistency,
creativity, and collaboration. All right, people. So there you go. That's exactly the way to get through obstacles. And to find out more about that, don't forget, we'll have some links for you. It's Lessons from the Obstacle Course. And we'll have some links directly to the book and also to her website, kellymajdan.com. So you can do that. And where else could people get in contact with you?
So I also have Instagram and Facebook, Power Through Wellness, it's the name of our company. And, your power comes from within. It truly does. And also on LinkedIn. So you can find Kelly Majdan on LinkedIn and also Power Through Wellness on all 3.
We don't TikTok. Oh, no. I know, just because you don't want to be brainwashed.
I'm like, okay, there are some limitations as you're getting older. You're like, okay, do I really have to learn another social media platform?
Yeah, we could talk about that forever. But yeah, so I'll put all the links into the show notes so that all of you can get in touch with Kelly. But definitely take a look at the book because it's something else. Let me tell you. So you got to give it a good read. So, all right. So thank you so much, Kelly. This has been a lot of fun and a lot of good comparables between our lives.
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
interesting.
Crazy.
And yeah, like really crazy, like surreal, which has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate this. I'm glad that we were able to connect. This has been fun.
All right, everybody. Thank you. We will see you in the next one. Well, that wraps up another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Minus, saying thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. If today's stories inspired you, please take a moment to review, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create an even bigger impact. Remember, every challenge is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep pushing, keep challenging, and never stop pursuing your extraordinary.